If you're planning a trip to Costa Rica or planning on planning a trip to Costa Rica, then you just came across the perfect video. And yeah, that's an unbiased opinion. If you don't know me, I'm Cam, a travel and adventure photographer, and today I'm going to dive into exactly how I spent 10 days in Costa Rica. And stay tuned because at the end of this video I'm going to share some really helpful planning tips and everything you need to know before you go. I'm also going to have everything I use to book all my excursions linked in the description below, and no, they're not affiliate links, so I don't make any money, but they will help you guys save time planning. So with that, let's go ahead and jump into this epic itinerary. First, let me break the trip down. We stayed in 3 different locations for 3 nights each, working our way from southern Costa Rica all the way to the northern part of the country. We spent the first 3 nights in Quepos, exploring Manuel National Park, Vuelta, and the amazing Pacific coast. On day 4, we drove around 3 hours to Bajos del Toro area, where we saw some of the most incredible waterfalls in the country and probably the entire world. On day 7, we drove from Bajos del Toro up to La Fortuna, which was about an hour drive, to see some more waterfalls, some volcanoes, and some incredible wildlife. And now that you guys have the general breakdown, let's jump into the specifics. Our first day was spent landing in San Jose, getting our rental car and driving about 3 hours over to Quepos, which is on the southwestern coast. We made it there just in time to enjoy our first sunset of the trip. We grabbed some dinner at Marina Pez Vela, which has a bunch of restaurants and shops, before checking into our Airbnb. On day 2 and our first full day in Costa Rica, we spent the entire day exploring Manuel National Park. We made reservations at the earliest time slot and got there right when the park opened. There's basically one long loop trail that brings you around the whole park, where you'll get to see different species of monkeys and sloths in their natural habitat. You also come across a few different beautiful beaches where you can swim and cool off for a while. Keep in mind you cannot bring in snacks, plastic, or drinks, but there is a little restaurant inside where you can buy food and drinks. On day 3, we were up early to make it to our snorkeling tour out of Vuelta to Caño Island. It was about an hour drive south of Quepos, but it was incredibly worth it. The tour began on a charter out of Marino Bayana National Park and an hour boat ride to Caño Island, where we saw some incredible sea life. They dock up on the island for an hour, where you can rest and hike up a short 5-minute trail for this breathtaking view. After that, we did a bit more snorkeling and then made our way back to the mainland, where they fed us lunch in the park before heading back to Quepos for the night. For our last day in the area, we visited Nauyaca Waterfalls, which is also down in Vuelta. We made a reservation online and picked up our tickets at the ticket center before driving down to the parking lot. The hike is about a mile and change uphill and took us around 45 minutes to complete. Make sure you bring plenty of water to stay hydrated. We got to the waterfalls and were blown away by the size and beauty of them. There's 2 separate falls to see, and you can swim, climb, and do some cliff jumping off each. This is a popular area, so I recommend getting here early to enjoy some time on your own. We spent a good 3 to 4 hours here and then got in our car and drove up to our next Airbnb in Bajos del Toro for the night. On our first day in Bajos del Toro, we spent the day hiking to Catarata, Vuelta del Canon. I know, it's tough for me. You don't need reservations, just bring cash to the farm where the hike begins to buy your tickets. The hike itself wasn't too difficult as far as elevation gain, but there were over 10 river crossings and it wasn't exactly short. It took us about 2 hours to arrive at the waterfall, but it was well worth it. This multi-story waterfall is one of the most beautiful falls I've ever seen. There was nobody else there, as it's a less visited spot in this region. Bring waterproof shoes, clothes to swim, snacks, and plenty of water for this experience. We spent a few hours hanging out, just enjoying the nature around us before the long hike back. On day 6 of the trip, and our second day in Bajos del Toro, we visited La Paz Waterfall Gardens and Wildlife Refuge. It was about a half hour outside of Bajos del Toro, but worth the drive. We made reservations online, but I saw others buying tickets there as well. This place was a much more refined establishment with paved paths and a giant buffet-style restaurant that starts serving lunch around 11. La Paz Wildlife Refuge has rescued tons of exotic animals that were kept as illegal pets and for various reasons cannot be released back into the wild. After walking through all the exotic animal exhibits, we made our way down the waterfall path, where you get a glimpse at some truly incredible natural waterfalls. It's an up and back style path that gets you amazing views of all the waterfalls in the garden. On day 7 and our last day in Bajos del Toro, we visited Catarata del Toro and the Blue Falls. They don't take reservations, but you can buy a joint ticket for both areas at the ticket booth. Catarata del Toro is a massive waterfall that exists in the crater of an extinct volcano. It is known as the waterfall of Bajos del Toro. It was a good 500 steps to get to the bottom, but it was well worth it. You also get some great views of it along the way. After that, we drove about a quarter mile down the road to the start of Blue Falls, which has 8 different waterfalls to see. Each waterfall is unique and beautiful in its own way. Make sure to bring waterproof shoes or boots and something to swim in because the water is just too gorgeous not to dive in. We spent around 5 hours here before heading out and making our way to La Fortuna for the night. On our first day in La Fortuna and day 8 of the trip, we started the morning visiting La Fortuna Waterfall. We made reservations online for the earliest time slot to beat the crowds. It's another few hundred stairs to get down, but again, totally worth it. You can also swim in the water here, which is super cool. We only spent about an hour here as it got packed pretty quickly before making our way to Volcano Arenal National Park. We decided to go to Arenal 1968 Park as it has the famous Lava Trails hike. This hike is on the lava trails that covered a small village near the volcano after its last major eruption in 1968. The viewpoint at the top is the closest you can legally get to Arenal volcano, and it is just spectacular. After the hike, we made our way back to our stay at La Fortuna Lodge. This is a super cool hotel and economically friendly, you know what I'm saying. We got this nice room, please ignore the mess, with a balcony that overlooks the volcano for just $100 a night, and it includes a complimentary breakfast. Again, this is not sponsored. I'm just looking out for all of you guys. Day 9 of our trip was spent at Mistico Arenal Hanging Bridge Park, which is famous for its suspended bridges in the canopy of the forest. We made our reservations online and I was seriously blown away by this place. I knew the bridges would be a cool experience, but never thought we'd see so much wildlife so close to us. After spending a few hours here, we really got the wildlife bug, so we made our way back to La Fortuna and headed over to the Bogarin Trail. The Bogarin Sloth Trail is known as the best place to see sloths. We bought tickets right there at the counter and then began our walk. We went on our own and it was really peaceful, and we saw 4 sloths, which is pretty cool. I'd recommend going with a guide though, as they're much better at spotting them from far away. On our last full day of the trip, we drove over to Tenorio National Park bright and early. We made reservations online, again for the earliest time slot to beat the crowds. This park has one trail that goes all the way up and back and is where you find the mystical Rio Celeste waterfall. The tale is that the water is so blue here because this is where God dipped his paintbrush when he painted the sky. The rest of the trail takes you to Laguna Azul, the Borbollones, and the Tenorio. Please excuse my horrible pronunciation, but I assure you I'm trying. It took us around 3 hours to get to the end of the trail and back, and since we had so much of the day left, we decided to make one last stop at El Salto rope swing back in La Fortuna. It's a free rope swing many locals recommended to us, and it was a really nice area to hang out and have fun to end our final day. And that, my gorgeous people, is how we spent 10 days in Costa Rica, and it was easily one of the best trips I've ever taken. And believe it or not, it felt like we had plenty of downtime to rest between the big hikes and the long days. Alright, let's keep this baby rolling and jump straight into some helpful planning tips and some things you need to know before you go. Okay, tip number 1, you know we're talking money. The currency exchange rate is about $1 to 520 Costa Rica colones. Anyways, just keep that in mind when you're paying for things there. They do accept US cash about everywhere you go, but you will be slightly overcharged as they're gonna tend to round up rather than round down. If you do have a travel credit card that has no foreign transaction fees, I highly recommend bringing that sucker along because you could pay for almost anything there with a credit card. Having a travel credit card will prove helpful in more ways than just one, which leads us right into our next tip. I personally recommend renting a car, especially if you plan on visiting more places than just one. And in Costa Rica, there's no shortage of bucket list places. It gives you the freedom to explore and alleviates any stress of getting stuck somewhere in a foreign country. In my 10 days of Costa Rica, I had no problems driving or parking anywhere, although we did get a flat tire, but we were able to fix it because the car we rented came with a spare. We rented an all-wheel drive vehicle from Enterprise for 10 days and it only costed us $450, which I don't think is that bad, and definitely worth it. Now, circling back to that travel credit card, another reason it can be really helpful is because if you're coming from a foreign country, they're gonna charge you for a mandatory foreign car insurance that you have to purchase with a rental car. However, a lot of travel credit cards will cover that foreign rental car insurance for free. I use my Capital One Venture and it worked, and I know there's tons of other cards that do that as well. So just make sure that you do that research ahead of time. And speaking of planning ahead, that is essentially my third and final tip to plan this trip. Oh my God, that rhymed. Costa Rica sees a ton of tourism throughout the entirety of the year, so you're gonna wanna make sure that you plan ahead and book excursions early. Like I said, I have everything we did linked in the description of this video, so if you're planning this trip and you wanna refer back, you can just click any of the links below and it'll take you right to their websites and you can book tickets there. Also, make sure you have a plan for self-service while you're in Costa Rica. I personally have AT&T, so I just called ahead and enabled my service abroad and I had no issues. It was only 10 bucks a day and I had service everywhere. I know there's tons of ways to get service in other countries, but I can only speak from my own experience. So just make sure you do your research ahead because you don't want to end up stranded in Costa Rica with no cell service. And that, my friends, will wrap up today's video. I truly hope it helps you plan your next adventure. If you want to see a more in-depth look at my real-time vlogs in these areas, I'll put a couple of them up here and there's a third one on my channel. If you wanted to like and subscribe, I would totally appreciate that. If not, you know, that's cool too. Anyways, I'll see you guys in the next one. I hope you guys have a wonderful rest of your day. Love ya. Peace.